Hi, welcome to Audiobook Academy. This is a self-paced audiobook. There's no need to keep an eye on things. Just pay attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen. This is a book summary of The Lean Startup Summary by Ries. Is there a formula for achieving success? This is where the lean, mean startup machine comes in. The Lean Startup is a go-to resource for anyone looking to break into the world of startups or fine-tune their existing business model. It takes us through the process of understanding customers, testing the market, analyzing user experience, and, most importantly, hustling to complete all of these tasks before our capital runs out of funds. Successful American entrepreneur Ries believes that hard work and passion are not enough to ensure success in a startup environment. When it comes to business and entrepreneurship, Ries recommends taking a scientific approach that places a strong emphasis on the pursuit of knowledge. An entrepreneur begins with a concept, much like a scientist would with a hypothesis. Although this is often the case in business, it is usually based on assumptions about what customers want and how much they are willing to pay. An entrepreneur who is successful creates an experiment, evaluates the data, and makes adjustments as needed, just like a scientist. However, the key is to complete this task quickly and inexpensively before funds run out. According to Ries, we have a tendency to rely on a vision or a great leader to make the magic happen, or we overanalyze the product or service we offer. Innovation and entrepreneurship, on the other hand, require a dependable methodology. We'll take a quick look at the sound scientific approach, which provides a framework for establishing a successful and long-lasting business venture. We'll also look at how to be more resilient and confident when dealing with the uncertainty that comes with being a part of a modern startup. Let's start with a story that everyone is familiar with. We've all heard stories about a dream team of brilliant college students who work together to start a company from the ground up. When they are able to secure some funding, they hire associates and then challenge anyone to stop them. This company has a fantastic product, a talented team, cutting-edge technology, and the right idea at the right time. Somehow, despite all of this, they are unable to maintain their level of success over time. They are disillusioned as a result of the failure of the company. Promises made to friends, family, and coworkers are all broken or not followed through with. Exactly why does hard work and perseverance not always result in success is a mystery to me. As one of the college students who attempted to start a company but failed, Ries understands what it's like to be a failure. His story is universal, and it serves as a reminder that promising startups frequently fail, and that the vast majority of ventures fail to achieve their full financial and operational potential. Starting a business is often portrayed as simple in popular culture. Every person, we believe, can achieve their goals by adopting a positive attitude and putting in the effort. Starting a business, according to Ries, is difficult. It takes time and a commitment to excellence. A great idea, an excellent team, and an innovative product are all necessary components, but it is the execution that counts in the end. Sustainable success is dependent on how well you run your startup. Unfortunately, the uninteresting details are important. Ries, despite his initial failure, persevered. Another company, Imvu, was founded by him and his partners in 2004. Some of you may be familiar with the term. It is an online social network where people can meet new people, chat with each other, create digital items, and play games using 3D avatars. That they went against the traditional business approach, however, was what was most innovative. It was important for this new process to have a quick cycle time, to be focused on what customers wanted, and to know how much they were willing to pay. When making decisions, this strategy was all supported by the scientific method. These individuals found this approach to be successful. As a result of its phenomenal growth, the company now has millions of users and generates annual revenues of $50 million. The practical knowledge and experiences of Ries serve as the foundation for this publication. He discusses methods that he has tested and found to be effective, which we can all use to increase our chances of achieving our objectives. All that is certain is that chaos and uncertainty will reign. It is true that the only things that are certain in a startup are chaos and uncertainty. This necessitates effective management, validated learning, scientific experimentation, and rapid evaluation of product-market fit in order to succeed in entrepreneurship. All of these are extremely important to remember. A pragmatic solution based on the build-measure-learn feedback loop, the author's model incorporates the author's experience. In his opinion, this loop will provide us with a reliable guideline and framework for entrepreneurship success. Rather than a product, Ries asserts that startups are institutions. Therefore, they require a distinct type of management, which we tailor specifically to the extremely uncertain nature of the environment in which they find themselves. In order to avoid losing their investment, Successful entrepreneurs understand that if their startup fails, they must find out why as soon as possible, before their funds run out. And it is at this point that the science comes into play. Learning comes first and foremost in the lean startup methodology. In order to learn, disciplined experiments must be carried out, a process Ries refers to as validated learning through scientific experimentation, VLSI. Using this method, chaos is brought under control and uncertainty is reduced to the greatest extent possible. One of the most important aspects of building a long-term business is quickly determining what customers want and how much they are willing to pay for it. Startups typically fail because they create something that people do not want to pay for, and this is the primary reason they fail. According to Ries, we ask ourselves far too often, can we build this product? Instead, we should be asking ourselves, should we even be manufacturing this product in the first place? Thus, the Build Measure Learn feedback loop provides us with a process that provides an answer to this critical question. It is important to understand the feedback loop known as the Build Measure Learn. It all starts with a standard hypothesis, just like any other scientific endeavor. Hypotheses are opinions or assumptions about what our customers want and are willing to pay for in the world of startups. We design an experiment after we've decided on a hypothesis to test. We can test our hypothesis quickly and inexpensively if we take this approach, which Ries refers to as building a minimum viable product, also known as an MVP. In the following step, we will conduct our experiment, which is called measurement. When customers are exposed to the product, we collect information about them based on their actions, which we then analyze and learn from. The questions we ask ourselves about the success or failure of a hypothesis determine whether or not we pivot or continue on with the hypothesis in question. And, while metrics and specificity are important, speed is also important in this case as well. In order to learn more quickly, the more quickly we cycle through the loop. Therefore, our primary goal is to shorten product development cycles, learn what customers value, and determine whether it is worth our time, money, and team's effort to pursue this opportunity. We are in the midst of an educational journey. When it comes to learning, there are two questions that must be answered first. Essentially, Ries divides these into two critical hypotheses, the value hypothesis and the growth hypothesis, see Figure 1. Customer-centric questions should be asked when evaluating value. The question now is whether our target customer is experiencing the issue we're trying to resolve. Alternatively, does the product add value to the customer's experience? The growth hypothesis, on the other hand, is concerned with how the company will expand once customers begin to use the product. The way Ries sees it, every startup is an experiment in which he is attempting to find the answers to these kinds of questions. Once we have formulated these two critical hypotheses, we can move on to the first step of the model, which is the build step, which is the second step of the model. To give an example, Nick Swinmurn founded Zappos, which is an online shoe and clothing store. To get things started, Swinmurn tested a simple value hypothesis to see if it was correct. If shoes were sold on the internet, would people be willing to purchase them? He photographed shoes in retail establishments and posted the images on a straightforward website for viewers to view. His hypothesis was proven correct when people began purchasing the shoes on the internet. Even though the process was manual and labor-intensive at the outset, it was quick to implement, inexpensive to run tests on, and simple to evaluate. His hypothesis would be validated as a result of all of this. Following that, Amazon purchased Zappos for approximately $1.2 billion in an all-stock transaction. According to Swinmurn's story, developing a quick and inexpensive experiment to test a hypothesis is extremely beneficial. He created a minimum viable product, MVP, and this MVP enabled him to begin learning about any potential opportunities and growth as soon as possible after launching his product. It is not the goal of this project to achieve product perfection, as is the case with most traditional product development. To put a hypothesis to the test. Overthinking and striving for perfection are natural human responses when creating a product. The build step, according to Ries, is where we spend the majority of our time wasting our efforts. MVPs can be developed in three different ways that are both time and cost effective. It is sometimes a good idea to create a video that only simulates a product before building the actual thing. Syncing software such as Dropbox is a well-known example of this. Drew Houston, the company's founder, built an early prototype in 2007. But it wasn't ready to handle large volumes of customers. To determine whether or not people were interested in his product, he conducted a market research campaign. As a demonstration of the prototype's primary characteristics, he recorded a video. Overnight, the number of people who signed up for his product increased from 5,000 to 75,000. Dropbox was the solution, as evidenced by the response, which convinced him that people needed a file syncing service. The concierge MVP comes in second place. Manually solving a specific problem for a customer is the goal of this method of working. However, while this method will take a significant amount of time, the results will be invaluable in determining whether your product has any potential customers. Most concierge MVPs are concerned with addressing the issues that early adopters are experiencing. This type of MVP requires you to run before you can walk, which is an important concept to remember. In order to establish an ongoing customer base, concentrate on a slower process that leads to optimization. When it comes down to it, creating the illusion of a technologically advanced solution while in reality operating manually behind the scenes is the Wizard of Oz MVP. Are you familiar with the above phrase? With respect to Zappos, Swinburne used this strategy. Using these three examples, I hope to demonstrate that having a minimum viable product, MVP, does not excuse poor quality. The wrong conclusion will be drawn if we create something that does not accurately represent our product or service. Our MVP must be designed in such a way that it can be tested with confidence. We must be able to distinguish between what is valuable and what is not. The importance of user experience and split testing. An experiment in which you divide your customers into two or more groups and then vary a set of variables between the groups is called split testing. In some cases, the variables can be fairly simple to understand. Consider the difference between a red button on one version and a green button on the other version. To determine how two different customer groups respond, a split testing experiment is conducted. Using a valid metric, you can then assess the impact of each version and determine which one provides the most value. Nevertheless, what exactly qualifies as an acceptable metric? Ries contends that it is in the next step of the loop that we truly begin to learn what customers want from us. In the words of Ries, metrics assist us in discovering what our customers want. It is not what they claim to want, nor is it what we believe they desire. It is his recommendation that we avoid vanity metrics and instead choose actionable metrics that demonstrate whether or not we are making progress. In spite of the fact that vanity metrics are flattering, they do not actually measure any progress in the long run. Because of this, it would be presumptuous to conclude that our Facebook advertisement has been a success simply because it received many likes. Likes do not generate any revenue in and of themselves. Aside from that, the money raised from investors, the number of employees hired, or the addition of new features aren't always indicative of true progress. Another arbitrary metric might be the number of hours we put in at work, which may or may not be related to our actual results in the end. We can make better decisions if we have useful, actionable metrics. Defining core metrics and determining how to track them are essential for any startup to succeed. A realistic picture of progress is provided by the fundamental metrics. Customer engagement, growth, and financial performance are all measured in detail by Ries in this book. In addition, there is a critical metric, known as cohort analysis, that can assist each of us in building a successful startup. The way people interact with our products is something that is frequently overlooked. As a result, global metrics such as total revenues or total users should be avoided. To better serve customers, Ries recommends grouping them into cohorts. Different groups of customers with common characteristics are referred to as customer cohorts. This method makes it much easier to define customers and analyze how each group makes use of a particular product than the traditional approach. We receive what Ries refers to as independent report cards, which provide us with a system for analyzing and comparing over time in order to determine what is working and what is not working. Consider taking some time to think and reflect. As Ries points out, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of taking the time to reflect on and learn from the data collected. The only way to know whether to pivot or persevere is after we've completed this critical step. It is our metrics that determine whether we should continue or pivot. Maintaining focus means continuing through the build, measure, learn cycle, whereas pivoting requires a great deal more creative problem solving. Pivoting may imply an entirely different approach to a problem. But how do we know when it's time to change course? Having regular pivot or persevere meetings with both the leadership and the product development team, as suggested by Ries, is the best way to address the problem. Keeping in mind that pivoting does not imply failure is essential for success. According to Ries, there are a variety of interesting pivots you could make. Alternatively, you could look into whether a zoom-in pivot or a zoom-out pivot would be beneficial for you to consider. When we find out which specific features of a product customers like, we call this a zoom-in pivot. If we choose to zoom in and concentrate solely on this feature, we will be ignoring everything else. A zoom-out pivot, on the other hand, is used when the elements aren't enough to meet the needs of the customers on their own, and we need to add more to meet those needs. When the initial group of customers is not as interested as we had hoped, we call this a pivot in the customer segment. Other groups may be more enthusiastic about the project, however. It is much easier to change the target customer focus when you have this information at your disposal. When we reach the point of needing to focus on revenue generation through advertising rather than charging for the actual product, we have reached a value capture pivot. At the end of the day, any entrepreneur who wishes to start a business should read and engage with the book The Lean Startup. With his simple and highly accessible methodology, Ries helps people bring their ideas to life while increasing their chances of success in the marketplace. While business can be intimidating, Ries makes it accessible to a whole new generation of founders who are eager to build the next big thing in a world where it can be difficult. In the opinion of Ries, success stories do not occur as a result of having good genes or being in a favorable location at a favorable time. Instead, success is achieved by following the proper procedures, being self-reflective, and understanding that it is something that can be learned. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. See you in next audiobook.